The color utilizing nerdiness thermostat for this video is rated fuchsia for unscripted ranting, alien universe junk, DOS, huffing spray paint, and 40k miniatures in the background.
I am Swamp. Excuse the voice, I'm a little sick. I made the mistake of interacting with human beings, those disgusting worm babies. But of course, that does not refer to you lovely people that are watching this right now. The purpose of this little presentation is to show you people what I did to create a gaming PC. We'll call it a DOS gaming PC. I wanted to give it a relatively cool theme, something that I could sit in a corner and become a conversation piece. Didn't want to put too much time into it, but I wanted it to look pretty good. And I was going to use whatever old hardware I had sitting around to build this PC, as not to spend really any money on it besides maybe a little bit of paint or something like that. So theme-wise, it had to be something that sort of fit the whole DOS concept. And I started thinking of those giant evil corporations of the past. OCP, Cyberdyne Systems, those sort of things. But I decided finally to go with my favorite, Weyland-Yutani. The trying to act benign but really evil corporation that runs everything in the aliens' future. Now I've seen some pretty awesome aliens mods that people did out there, and I wasn't going to spend that kind of time and effort on it. You know, there's people that completely built systems from scratch that have, had like alien face huggers embedded inside of them like it was a laboratory experiment. But no, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make it look like a... First of all, I wanted to not spend that much time on it, but I also wanted to make it look like some sort of piece of equipment that sat in the back of, like an LV-426 in a corner that was part of the atmospheric processing plant and got rusty and sort of thing like that, or a piece of equipment that's been repurposed a bunch of times and it's got dents on it and shipping labels and that sort of thing. So that's what I went for. All right. let's try to pretend like we're not sick. Okay, yeah. How's it going out there? Okay, let's talk hardware for this thing. Of all the old hardware I was able to dig up. Of all the old hardware I was able to dig up in the garage and in the closets in the backyard and things like that, I was able to find an Intel VC820 motherboard, manufactured like 1999, 2000-ish, and I've got with it a Pentium 3 800 megahertz processor, perfect for it. I have a couple of Rambus rims, as they call them, that fit in that motherboard too, a 128, a 256. Those will work just fine, because they don't have to work in, parallel, whatever thing that new ones have to do. The motherboard has an AGP slot. I have a old Radeon 7000, which it would work. It would be fine for doing DOS games, but I also have a Radeon 9600 Pro, which is a better card, so I'm going to use it anyway. So I have an old case laying around that's by a company called Apvia. Anyway, it's got a translucent side and whatnot. It's cheap. It's a cheap front plastic door in the front, and it's got some chrome parts on it that are made of plastic. But it does have these cool little view meters and things on the front of it that give it a little bit of sci-fi look if I can mess it up enough. It's perfect for this. So I was able to get all of that stuff crammed into this case. Standard ATX form factor. It all still fits in there. Case is a bit newer than the hardware, but nonetheless it works. I stuck a bunch of extra fans in there that glowed and things. And of course the cable management's just meant to be a mess. I was contemplating if I was going to do something inside to make it look freaky, but, I'll probably... Oh, look, there's the 7000. I forgot this was my demonstration of the 7000. Oh well, it's beautiful, isn't it? Looking at the back, you can see that I was unable to find a little one of the framing aluminum things that go around the motherboard edge here, whatever those are called. So it'll look kind of crappy, but hey, it fits with the overall theme. So OS-wise, I decided to go with Windows 98 instead of pure DOS, just because there was the motherboard didn't have an ISA slot, and all old Sound Blasters, at least the ones I have, are ISA cards, and they are really more compatible when playing DOS games using a Sound Blaster, because this motherboard had integrated audio via one of those VIA chipsets or something like that. I don't know if it will work. We'll see. But with Windows 98, if I run it with Windows 98 in DOS mode, it should have a little bit more, hopefully, compatibility with that integrated sound card. Plus, if I want to play some little bit later games, which the motherboard will be able to run, I can. Things will actually run in Windows 98. But I will actually have it just boot directly into DOS and fake DOS, and I'm going to use a color interface menu system in order to make it look cool when it boots up, and probably have a Weyland-Yutani logo and that sort of thing. First thing I had to do was mask all the holes in this thing so I could paint it. I was going to do a primer coat first to see how it looked. Since it was a nice shiny looking thing, I might leave it that way. But I picked this awful automotive primer, which was not a good choice. But I use painter's blue tape because I have a lot of it laying around because I use it for the bed on my 3D printer anyway. So although the stuff is a bit expensive, I use a lot of it. Now please enjoy this short blue painter's tape masking and cutting montage. So at first I primed it, even though I intended to make it look all beat up. I wanted to prime it so that it was actually, you know, whatever I did paint on it would stick to it. However, I used this automotive primer just because I thought the gray color would look kind of cool, but maybe that would be a good enough finish to leave it as a gray device. But anyway, it has like, it's designed to later be sanded, so it's got this very gritty, sandy finish to it. And literally, even after it dries, like sand chunks fall off it, like it's covered in sand. And it's really messy and nasty stuff, and I would never use it again, but until you paint over it with something else, and then it finally stabilizes, but ugh, what a mess it was. Won't do that again. So I did a little bit of experimenting with painting directly on the rusty effect onto the primer, and that's when I discovered how gritty and nasty the stuff was, and I decided I was going to have to paint over it with something, full paint to cover up this primer. I even just stuck some stickers on it to see how well it would stick to this primer, but it does it not very well anyway. This primer stuff is pretty gross until you paint over it. Next, I was going to make sure to have enough labels and stuff to stick on it to give it that Weyland-Yutani theme. I was also going to make a stencil on the side of it, like some slob working on a flight deck somewhere had to label the thing before shipping. And so I was going to go into Photoshop and just start building labels and then maybe 3D printing some logos and stuff to stick to it. But I checked online and there was an awful lot of stuff people had already made. Some really cool stuff. A lot of cool stuff was done by this guy who goes by Synthetic Dreamer on DeviantArt, Joe Thomas. But anyway, he had a lot of really cool stuff there, and a lot of stuff I downloaded just to print out and stick on my thing, so I didn't have to do the work, and his stuff looked great. So anyway, go over to his page, like it, do whatever. So I printed out a lot of the labels I found online on label paper, just regular paper, label paper, so that I could stick it to it and have it not actually be very high quality and tear it up and stain it and get it to bleed and whatnot. And I also printed out one of the stencils there, which was going to be the fun part of having to cut out the stencil with an X-Acto knife, but hey, I'm up to it, and it turned out really well. That's what I was going to stick on the side. So yes, this did take a lot of patience, but, you know, I wanted it to look pretty. And, well, I mean, I had nothing better to do. I guess I could have just printed out as a big nasty sticker and stuck it on the side, but now I've got a Weyland-Yutani stencil that I can spray paint on random things like your car or your dog or whatever. So yeah, I guess the energy drinks also helped. Well, it did make you a little shaky, but it helped to me get through it, that is. It's also, while cutting the stencil, I realized that all this sandy grit had been coming off of the case that was sitting there, and so I had to definitely put another coat of something over it just to stabilize this nasty primer that was on it. Anyway, I went flat black so it would look utilitarian, and I had the spray paint, and it seemed to work out just fine. But anyway, it ended up turning out pretty cool. Looked utilitarian. I didn't have to get perfect coating, get a little bit blotchy. Already have it weathered a little bit, since I'm going to weather it much worse. Messed around with ripping up some Weyland-Yutani labels on it. That's my first experiment. But I did get some drips. I'm going to have to incorporate those somehow into the way it looks beat up. And before I stripped off all the masking I had done, I was going to make sure to stencil on the beautiful Weyland-Yutani logos I had made. And do on both sides. I was going to do one on the clear glass also, just because I thought it would look kind of good, but obviously I have to take the tape out that side before I could do it. But here is some more fascinating blue painter's tape going down on the stencil. Ooh, aren't you glad you're watching this? And while we're at it, why don't we just waste an epic ton of blue painter's tape to mask the rest of it, as not to get the white spray paint anywhere else. Ooh, hot spray painting action, yeah. Well, didn't that turn out pretty? Kind of looks like someone did it in a rush too, how I got a little bit blurry on the sides and stuff. I like that. I also painted another logo over the window section on the other side, because I felt like it. So, there. I also have this Rust-Oleum metallic crap to paint over this 3D printed Weyland-Yutani logo I made to make it look metal, and that should be cool. Now time to actually cut out and stick some of these sticker things on them, yay! The Weyland-Yutani logo actually turned out pretty good on the window, if I do say so myself, and I do. Here is some high-speed unmasking tapey blue taping, because it is fulfilling to watch this stuff happen, I think, for me, anyway, sort of, whatever. That's right, you uncover those little circles, you do it. Okay, that's just creepy, it's like I'm telling myself to do things. Anyway, this is getting weird. After this, what else did I do? Oh, wait, those little strips, those are good. Oh, okay, shut up, sorry. Then I applied some of the stickers to make it look like it's been shipped and sent around, all aged and whatnot. Oh, that's right, you rubbed those stickers. What the hell's wrong with me? Yes, more stickers. Put that sticker on there. Oh, rub that one again. Yeah, that one needs some rubbing. Ooh, okay, I'm just gonna stop. Seriously, this is wrong. Okay, stickers are applied, and that table's a mess. And that purple one on the front, it seemed to work okay. We really gotta age this and make it not look like it's what it is. At this point, I started doing some of the rusting effect on the back with paint, but it's very careful to not cross that line where the rust starts to instead look like poop. I'm not sure if I crossed it. Here I shall demonstrate my making it look like poop effect. I mean, making it look like it's rusty effect. And, of course you use orange, brown, and black paint. If you've got like a burnt umber middle, you can use that too. I'm putting it on a sponge. Why I was using a sponge for my palette is beyond me, but it was there, and I didn't feel like finding a piece of cardboard or something. But anyway, I put the paint on it. I then apply the paint generously to the back of the thing. Usually black layers in the bottom make it nice and clumpy because it looks like it's actually pitting from the oxidation. And then brown, and then burnt umber on top of that, and then black, or maybe the orange a little bit on top of that, and kind of mix them around. And no, don't never paint them on, just dab them on, just tap, 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 and that makes it have that pitted, kind of corroded look. And it seems to work pretty well, convincing from a distance anyway. I seemed to go a little bit overkill, but then again, I made it look like it had really been sitting, like, somewhere in, like, an LV-426 processing facility. Maybe post-reactor explosion, being exposed to the elements or something, but hey, I thought it looked pretty good. Okay, and before anybody says it in the comments, I realized all the labeling I had done on it was a bit anachronistic. I have some Weyland-Yutani logos, I have some that are just Weyland Corp, and yes, I didn't really think too much about theming it that way, but I decided that it just means it's an old repurposed piece of equipment that may have existed before the merger with Yutani Corp, and so that's my explanation for that. You can see here that I went around the edges, making it look kind of nasty all in all the corners where water would have collected and whatnot. This is before I did any silver scraping, which was the last level to do on top of it, but it looks pretty good so far. A little bit poopy, but good. And here's with a little bit of silver highlight put there to look like the paint has been chipped off. It's been dragged around a little bit, but I gotta add a lot more to really make it look awesome. Here, using a chromier camera upstairs, you can kind of see there's better scratches. Nice silver outlines like it had been dragged across the floor somewhere by some upset technician who's got to go load it up onto the Sulaco or the Nostromo or something, who knows. But it looks pretty cool, I think. At least for a gaming PC. And actually, the labels got kind of nasty looking, which I appreciate. I used coffee on them, actually, to age them a bit and have them become runny and whatnot. Now, in regard to that little Weyland-Yutani logo I 3D printed, the spray paint sort of melted it a little bit and warped it. It was probably the heat in the backyard, actually, that probably did it, or maybe the caustic nature of the stuff. But it's like, oh, it's kind of beat up, that's kind of cool. But if I curve it, I can actually stick it on the front of the case, so I decided to curve it. I had to find something to curve it again, so I took a couple of rubber bands that were from Broccoli and hold it against an old Bluetooth speaker I had. Great, this should look great. Of course, put it outside for a minute, and it sort of got crushed and warped by the rubber bands, but hey, let's see how it looks in the front of the case. Not too bad. Let's paint it up, let's see how it looks. So here I'll give you a bunch of stills of the final product, because, you know, watching me paint all day is not that exciting, but here you can see how all that aging and rusting and pitting gave it character. I think it actually turned out looking pretty darn cool. Of course, it just looks like an old piece of crap I've loaded sitting around in my house now, but it's faux crap. Remember that, faux crap, people. And here you can actually see how I covered up those drips to make it look nasty and rusty spotted. So the other ways to extend this is I did buy an optical mouse to go with it that is a PS2 port, so I don't have to worry about that USB interaction stuff going on when dealing with DOS games. I've also got an old Korean Death Star flat screen monitor here that should be, again, more than adequate, that I'm going to paint up to match the rusty look of the rest of the system. And an old PS2 style keyboard that would also look good, all rusty and beat up for the same purposes. And again, I did this not to make it look like the most incredibly modded thing in the universe with like tentacles coming out of the case or whatever. I did it just to have a case have a pretty cool paint job to give it some character and have it be alien themed with the Weyland-Yutani corporate logos and whatnot. But anyway, it's now currently living next to my main computer setup, next to all my synth gear and stuff for writing music, and it's pretty cool to have a little retro machine running there. I did also spend a little time building a cheesy little menu system in the beginning that runs a little, my version of an antsy Weyland-Yutani logo. I think it turned out pretty cool. But anyway, I appreciate you watching the video, and I'll show you what I finally ended up doing with the monitor and the keyboard to make it match later in another video. Anyway, sorry this went and ended up being so long-winded, but I appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoyed the video. So go ahead and do those things you do when you're done watching the video. Whatever those things may be.